and welcome Inside the Void with me, Spacey Ghost. What is the Void? It's 50% off on Tuesdays. That's what it is. Also, it's just basically me talking about video games and anime, because that's what I care about. And to help me with that, I have a special guest. Who are you?
The Bard's Kiss. From The Bard's Kiss. And the Cup of Fun, I guess, too.
I imagine by now The Bard's Kiss would be, like, successful.
Hopefully. That's the idea, at least.
30,000 views.
Well, one can dream.
Yeah. And we're doing something special, so we were just gonna review all of RWBY. And then we realized that's kind of a big task.
There's a lot of it. A lot to cover.
Yeah.
Very rich lore.
Lots of theories, lots of secrets. So, instead we're gonna do a little RWBY rewatch, going one by one, starting with Season 1, because where else would you start?
Right.
So, where would you like to begin?
Oh, goodness.
You're the guest.
I don't know exactly where to start. It starts off very... It feels very slice of life at first. So it's hard to get into things until about halfway through when things start to pick up.
Oh, I should point out that we may be talking about spoilers because this is a rewatch. This is us looking over things after we've already, like, seen it before. One thing I think is fair game to point out at first is just the animation style.
Oh yeah, it improves so much, guys. Like after we just finished watching Season 5, like last week, and then we jumped into Season 1, and it was really weird going back to Season 1 when, like, there's so much clipping and there's no people in the background and
well, there's people, they're just weird
the shadows,
shadowy things. Like, oh, we leave silhouettes there. It's kind of people. They get the idea.
They know other people exist. It totally doesn't mean that person in the background who is not a shadow is not a main character or anything.
Yeah, totally.
They're totally normal people that have nothing to do with the plot. It is very interesting to see, and even the voice acting improved. Like, it wasn't bad voice acting, but you can see the improvement up to Season 5. And I'm kind of interested in going back and, as we're going to rewatch this, see the progress in every season.
Oh yeah.
To see how it goes.
Especially since I think this is Rooster Teeth. That it's the company that created this. Like, I think this is their first original animation.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not counting Red versus Blue.
Because that was gameplay that they voiced over.
Yeah, as popular as that is, and still is, I guess, all they did was just take, like, Halo and just dub over it.
Right. Which isn't necessarily bad. It was still entertained many people, but this was their first, like, thing they did completely on their own, I guess you could say.
How we got into RWBY.
I'm not... Honestly, I kind of want to, like, after watching other seasons, going back and watching season 1, like, it was good, but, like, things are so much more intense later on. I don't know, I guess I just enjoyed the slice of life and having it kind of resembling other things that I've watched, and just it being, like, put on a different, like, board, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I get what you mean, because, like, I remember watching it, and I wanted you and Cedric, who's another friend of ours, wanting to get you guys into it, and RWBY gave me a lot of, like, Soul Eater vibes.
Yeah.
Which we were all, like, really into at the time. I remember seeing it on Tumblr, like, GIFs and stuff, but assuming it was some weird Vocaloid thing.
Yeah, it resembles Vocaloid.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent.
Especially early on. Like, it looked like they just, like, went into the, what is it called, like, MMD or something?
Yeah, something like that.
And they just messed around with, like, edited Vocaloids.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad. That was just, like, my first impression.
Because we were also very into Vocaloids at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And how long ago did that come out? How long ago did RWBY, the first season, come out? Was it 2012?
Oh, my phone's in the other room.
I get my phone.
Yeah, I know it was either just before we graduated high school or the year before.
It came out August 16th, 2013.
Damn.
So yeah, there was a lot of things like that it was similar to that I was into at the time. I think that's what really got me into it originally. And I actually did really like the characters, especially right from the beginning, I loved Blake. She was, like, the character that I liked the most in the series. Although I thought Ruby was really cool, too. She was also one of my favorites.
I really liked John at the beginning. I know he was a doofus.
That was kind of his charm.
Yeah, that was his point. He was adorkable, as you can say. Yeah, he kind of sucked, but that also plays a part in, like, a lot of later things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his development. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's amazing. One of the things I actually wrote down, which we probably won't get into much here, because it was just season 1, but as in when we get further into this mini-series, I guess you could call it, that we're doing here, and, like, the difference between season 5 John and season 1 John is night and day.
Yeah, like, John in the first season, he just lets people walk all over him. Like, as confident as he tries to act around, like, women and stuff. If you're in his way, he's just gonna be like, oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
I go around here. It actually reminds me of one scene. It was a conversation that Ren and Nora were having. No, Nora was just like, nothing will ever get between the two of us. And he pops up. Only for them to later become, like, a team. But he doesn't actually ever get in the way, thankfully.
Yeah.
It was just kind of something that they did do. More about Jean. Later on, like, when he becomes close to Pyrrha and they're, like, no, when they find each other in the forest when they're forming their teams, we know what powers Jean has in season 5. But in season 1, it's treated as a mystery. But I feel like there's a lot of things that, now that I'm rewatching it and I know what it turns into, that are just kind of, like, oh, that happened way back then and somehow no one really picked up on it.
Yeah, I'm not going to say exactly what it is because we're going to get into it obviously later on. I feel like this is something we're going to say a lot. If you're talking about what I think you're talking about, like what happens to his face? Yeah, okay.
And I think right then and there, Pyrrha did know what he was capable of, even though he wasn't 100% sure himself. Also, Pyrrha always catches him by the spear, by the way.
Yes, I love that so much.
I didn't notice it before, but I think it happens twice in season 1. She catches him with the spear. One, she did on purpose. The other one, I think, was not on purpose. I also just found it funny that it was just a recurring theme, like, I'll just catch him with my spear.
So, John and Pyrrha's relationship.
At the beginning?
Yeah, at the beginning.
I think it is kind of pretty clear early on that Pyrrha is the one he gets closest to first. Like, he does have kind of, like, that thing with Ruby right at the beginning, like, hey, we're both really weird people here at this school, how about we be friends? But I feel like beyond that, they didn't have very much interaction, and Pyrrha and John get very close very quickly, I feel like.
Yeah, like, at the start, once Ruby and John were interacting, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, I'm like, love interest,
Right off the bat, no thank you.
But their interaction died down a lot by the end of the season, which isn't really necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something I thought wasn't going to work out quite that way.
One thing, I don't know if this is, like, actually canon, but I feel like it's pretty obvious that Pyrrha, like, was crushing on John from the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Same.
Which I think is really cute.
And he was completely oblivious, even though he acts really like, yeah, women, they're my thing, I'm going for them. He completely just does not see Pyrrha's interest in him from the start.
Another interesting thing that I kind of thought of while I was rewatching this is that each of the teams in this show has, like, a certain theme about it.
Oh yeah, I wrote that down.
Yeah. And with John's team, a lot of their characters are based off of characters from, like, myth and stuff. With Pyrrha being based on Achilles from Greek mythology. Her and John's relationship reminds me a lot of Achilles and Patroclus, their relationship, because even though Achilles is this super cool demigod that can do anything, is faster, is stronger, he totally falls in love with this basically lesser being.
The stork.
Yeah. And wants to, like, train with him and be equals with him, even though Achilles is, like, 1,000 steps beyond, and a cat tried getting in the box. And it also says a lot to, like, Pyrrha's character. Like, out of anyone for her to crush on or, like, even just hang out with, she picks the least likely person.
I think there's a certain charm about Jean. I think it is covered in season 2, but we'll get into the depths of that later, but it is covered in season 2, that there's just a certain charm that she enjoys about Jean, and just his obliviousness to everything, and for some reason she finds that very appealing.
She even was, like, in tournaments and stuff, and Jean had to be, like, reminded several times, like, hey, she's famous.
Tough, you know. We're going to school with a superstar.
You've seen her everywhere. Come on, John.
She was on a cereal box. Oh yeah, the cereal box. I remember that. Is that it? That's what you're taking away from this, John? By the end of the season, Pyrrha was one of my favorite characters. Like, at the beginning, she was kind of like, I don't really care so much about it. But by the end of the season, she was easily one of my favorites.
I just really like the sort of demeanor she carries. Like, it's almost a sort of elegance, along with just, like, her overall fighting style that I really enjoy watching.
I also enjoy the fact that even though she knows that she's good, and she knows that she could easily beat most of the people there, she's very humble about it. She's just not like, oh, I'm this big, tough person who can beat anybody up. She's very much like, oh yeah, so I can teach you this if you want me to. And I enjoy that about her character. Weiss, when she was introduced.
Oh my god, Weiss.
So, right from the beginning, I think it was episode 3, we rewatched it in a movie style, so it's hard to say exactly where things fall in the timeline, but I think it was episode 2 or 3 when Weiss is introduced, and she's just so mean, like...
Yeah, she's totally, like, the stereotypical, like, rich princess. I mean, she literally is kind of a princess.
Yeah.
I forgot how much of a bitch she is.
Yeah, she's pretty bad. Like, how do I end up really liking this character again by season 5? But yeah, at the beginning, I'm just like, oh, you're horrible. I hate you.
Yeah, it made me realize something about her. Like, wait a minute. Before she became part of Team RWBY, was she actually more like Wesley?
Wesley?
Yeah.
You guys don't know that. If you haven't watched season, I think he comes in at 3, maybe 4. Her youngest brother, and he is so mean.
Yeah, he's horrible.
He's horrible and manipulative and always trying to take advantage of people in every way he can. It is weird to think about that she was like that at one point. But I think you're right, she was probably at that point before she came to school. I kind of wonder why she's like that. I was thinking about it, like, her family is held up on a pedestal, and I think she is overwhelmed by the fact that there's so much expectations on her, and I think that is kind of where her meanness comes from, is just the fact that she's so overwhelmed with everything she has laid out in front of her. Everything is pretty much spoken for, and she doesn't like that.
Plus, anyone she might try and make friends with, like, before she actually makes friends, she probably just assumes, oh, they just like me for my money, they don't really want to be my friend. They just want to use me, so why even make connections?
Yeah, I think you have a very good point there, that she's just like, I don't think these are going to be, like, people that I actually want to be friends with. I didn't actually start liking her until after the whole thing with Blake happened. Like, it came up, and she's like, oh yeah, I hate the Faunas, I hate them so much. And at this time, we kind of knew there was something mysterious about Blake. And it turned out that she was a Faunus, and she was part of the White Fang, and all this. And, like, when she had that time with Blake, like, where she just argued with her and hated her for, like, 2 episodes, that made me like her even less. But then she came back around and just immediately got over the fact that, hey, that she was one point part of these people who have made my life hard in general. And she just completely turned that around, like, okay, I understand this, I'm sorry that I was mean to you. Like, she didn't actually apologize, but you kind of picked up on that. Like, oh, next time just let us know that there's something wrong, we can try to help you. Like, I think she was still too proud to apologize, but that was the closest thing we were gonna get for an apology from Weiss.
Yeah, and I'm so glad they fixed that, because I was so worried, like, oh no, are we gonna have to deal with her being like this for, like...
all the whole series.
But no, she actually turned around, she grew up a little bit, and plus it's, like with what you were saying, like, it came from an honest place. It wasn't just her mimicking, like, what her father said, or what the media has said about the Faunus and the White Fang, unlike other characters on the show.
It is kind of interesting, they never really cover... She says that her father came home angry all the time, and it made her life just hard. And it didn't really go into detail, but she gets really tense at that moment. And, like, it just made my life so hard. She clenches her fists and just, like, bangs on the table a little bit. That's actually, like, touched back on. Like, we are just told that, yeah, my life was hard because of the faunus.
Mm-hmm.
We never hear why. And I kind of wish they would have covered that more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, maybe did her father abuse her?
Yeah.
Or, like, was it her mother? Because,
she also never mentions her mother.
Yeah,
at any point.
You know, I think at one point, I don't know if it was this season, but at one point I think she mentions that her mother was kind of an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
So that could also play a part in things, too. But other than that, that's all we know.
Yeah, it's something that I hope that will be laid out more as the show goes on. But yeah, it just wasn't covered, and I was kind of interested in that part of Weiss. She's put on episode of this perfect individual, is high class, her family has a lot of power, but that doesn't mean everything's okay.
Do you want to go into Blake? We mentioned it before, but I feel like we may need to go into a little bit more detail. In RWBY, there's this group, kind of like a subgroup of humans, called the faunus. They basically have animal attributes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they explain where exactly they come from.
Yeah, not as far as I know. Maybe I'll find more things later, but as far as I know, they don't really explain how they got these animal attributes. They hold animal features, and I think they also, most of them have dark vision, I believe, as well.
Yeah, I think they all do.
Mm-hmm. I think she said 60%, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Then again, things might have changed when they started adding more faunus in later seasons.
Right. But it is covered, like, the huge war that the faunus and the humans had for the longest time. Was that the 100 Years' War? They mention the 100 Years' War a lot in this, but they don't actually talk about it all that much. I think it might have been between the faunus and the humans.
Also, just a side note, John did mention his grandfather fighting in a war.
I wrote that down too, yeah. His grandfather was in the war.
So, I don't know. Would we maybe, like, hear more about that in the future?
I hope so. I'm curious about John's family in general, because he doesn't come from a line of hunters. Mm-hmm. That is kind of touched on in this season. Like, what's his name? Good Witch.
Oh, Glenda.
Yeah. Glenda does kind of say, like, she mentions to Osfin, oh yeah, this guy here, Jean, his transcripts, I don't think they were true. And they do kind of mention that. And I think it's pretty obvious that he did not come from a line of hunters and huntresses.
Yeah.
He's the first generation to actually pick this up.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, onto the war between faunus and humans.
Mm-hmm. We know that they eventually did come to, like, an agreement, but there was a lot of bloodshed and such before then. The war stopped, but there was still a lot of inequality. And because of that, this group known as the White Fang came into existence, where they would do protests and such against the humans, boycotts, just saying, like, hey, you guys, like, we may not be fighting anymore, but you still treat us like crap, and we don't appreciate that. That doesn't really go any, like, they try that for a while, and then it doesn't really go any further than that. Blake mentions being part of the White Fang. She was basically born into being a White Fang member. The power shifted. Later on, we find out who the leaders kind of were, but we don't really touch on that at the moment. But she had been born into this faunus rebellion. She grew up and saw the complete shift in, like, peaceful protests, boycotts, such to them being more violent, starting stealing, like, from the dust companies. So they were stealing dust. They were killing humans, destroying basically anything associated with humans. Mm-hmm. And it took a very intense shift. And while Blake did go with it for a while, she eventually saw, like, okay, this isn't going to get us anywhere, and I'm going to withdraw myself now. It was kind of covered in her trailer, if you did watch that, the black trailer. Before the series launched, there was 4 trailers, one for each team member of RWBY. And Blake's was this trailer about her, looks like she was doing a, what's the word for it,
train heist?
Yeah, train heist. Well, things were stepping up more and more intense and more violently. I think that was her biggest moment of, like, oh, wait a minute. What we're doing isn't right, is it? And I think she was kind of building up to that at that point, but that's when she decided that she no longer wanted to be associated with this. She was literally the right hand man of the main person of this big rebellion group, and she noticed that this wasn't going to go in a way where it was going to end well for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
She immediately withdrew herself from that right then in that situation in a matter of like 15 minutes. She's just like, okay, I'm done with this. And she immediately leaves it. And I think then she moves on to go to Beacon.
Yeah, that's actually the same train heist I think Weiss mentions during their fight.
Yeah. Blake, overall, we don't really get to learn that much about her, per se. We kind of move through her, like, being this mysterious person who doesn't really talk to very many people, to kind of opening up a little more to Yang, and then later revealing that she was a Faunus, and she was part of the White Fang, and she had all these things about her past, but we don't really go into detail about it.
Oh, also, this has to do with a character, like, later on in the series, but I do want to bring it up. I think it's safe to, like, say names.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's safe to, like, bring up characters that appear later on, just not, like, go into full detail about them. Because, Blake, in this first season, does remind me a lot of, I think her name is Ilya.
Oh, yeah. Kind of blindly working for a person.
Mm.
Like, she was kind of blindly working for a person into something that she thought was going to turn into something great, and it just wasn't. Knowing what happens later on, there's so much more to Blake than just, like, I was part of the White Fang, I'm a Faunus, and all of that. There's so much more to her, and I honestly can't wait to start building onto that later on.
Yeah, because they do put a lot of focus on that, because that's also kind of what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to avoid that when talking about her backstory, because it heavily is entwined with it.
Right.
But I am also excited to see, like, okay, what else is there to Blake?
Right.
What is she without the White Fang?
Mm-hmm.
Now that certain things are happening. I didn't realize I was going into spoiler territory, but we're just gonna leave it as that.
Yeah, it is interesting to see, like, we're just touching on conflict that will show itself through up to season 5, and it gets so much bigger than what we see in season 1.
Yeah. I really love how it's not just like a one-off season thing. Like, oh, this is the conflict for this season.
Right.
Now we're done with it. No, it's prevalent throughout its history and throughout its future.
I think that's very interesting, the way they take it. Something else I do want to cover is, we do know that Faunus don't like people. They don't like humans. That's just a fact about them. They kind of have a right to. Humans kind of treated them like crap, killed a lot of them. But we see at the end of the season, and Blake also questions this, we see the Faunus working with a human known as, what is the name? Torchwick. And he's working with them to steal
Dust?
To steal dust, and they're working together to do it. And again, knowing what happens later on, it's something that's part of something so much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I do kind of want to talk a little bit about how he is. So Torchwick, he's introduced, and he seems to be kind of like the main guy.
Yeah, like, oh, this is the main villain you're gonna fight and keep seeing over and over again.
Right. But by the end of the season, you realize that he is merely a piece of a bigger puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Right at the end of the season, you're introduced to the actual, like, his boss, and even beyond that, there's other people beyond that person that have fingers in this whole thing. The fact that the whole series is kind of around chess pieces. It's around a game of chess. When I was first introduced to him, he reminded me of a pawn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really evident by the end of season 1, that he is merely a small piece of this whole entire thing.
Yeah, like, I remember watching it and seeing Torchwick. And Torchwick, like, yeah, he gets things done, but, like, first of all, he's human with all these Faunus. Why do they even trust him? Even they question it themselves.
Right.
And also, Torchwick, he seems pretty lame.
Yeah.
Like, for a villain?
He's like the guy who's trying to be cool but isn't.
Yeah. He's like, oh, I'm getting paid by the hour, whatever, kind of thing. So, it kind of puts you in the Faunus' shoes. Like, hey, why are we dealing with this guy? And it really comes to it really, how do I put it, solidifies the reveal, I guess.
Yeah.
That there's other stuff going on, and I kind of want to learn more. I don't remember. This could be just me not remembering things. Because I don't remember why they chose Torchwick.
Yeah.
Why he agreed to this.
Right.
That's obviously later season stuff.
The more talking about the chess pieces, chess game kind of theme going on here. Yeah. Putting themselves together is when it really starts to come to see, like, chess pieces are... A chess game is kind of the theme going on here, is when they start putting together their teams. So, Ozpin, the main headmaster of Beacon, every year does these relics to select team members, and the pieces he chose that year, I actually wrote down what chess pieces they got and how they became part of their teams.
How each piece symbolizes the core of the team, maybe?
I don't know how to weave this in.
I believe in you.
So, their teams are picked by chess pieces that the headmaster of Beacon chose. And their teams each kind of, like, have names that they were until they put their first
initial
together. And for Team RWBY, they had the White Knight pieces, which is interesting, I think, because White Knight is kind of this symbol for, like, a hero, someone coming in to save the day at risk of themselves. And I think that's very interesting that they had the White Knight pieces, and then Team Juniper were the White Rooks. And Rooks are kind of like these people who specialize in, like, one thing. They're extremely loyal, and they're bodyguards, they're loyal, they have unique skills, and they usually do a lot of rescuing, per se. And I think it's interesting that those two things were chosen for the teams, and I think they symbolize something that could turn into something bigger. So the Team RWBY will be the people who come in and save the day, and then there'll be Team Juniper, who are also part of this, but they aren't, like, the main heroes. They're there to help out the heroes, the main people.
I actually never thought of it like that. Like, the White Knight part got to me. I just never thought too much about, like, the Rooks, or, like, even potential, like, other pieces, too.
Right. It never is really revealed to us. I think they do kind of cover the third team that Jean gets mixed up with, but I didn't catch what they were.
It was black something.
Yeah, and I think they also probably represent something. However, I didn't get that down in my notes, and I don't know what pieces they ended up getting.
Yeah.
But I think all that will come into play later on as time moves forward a little bit. The whole theme, I think, is going to be a chess game, and I'm kind of excited to see, now that I've realized that symbolism, what it will bring later on.
I think it's really interesting. Again, not going too far. Just the word choice itself.
Yeah.
Like, calling them relics, and then what we know later on.
What it turns into.
Yeah.
Also, I noticed about Yang and Blake. When I was in culinary school, for those of you who don't know, I did go to culinary school, I have a degree, and one of the things we covered in our world foods class was the evenness of yin and yang in Chinese food. It was symbolic in their food and symbolic in their culture in general. And so I kind of looked into this a little bit, but it came to me because Blake, black, and Yang was just like, I know that's one of the pieces, is it the white piece. The white piece is supposed to represent masculinity, heaven, heat, and light, and activity. Like, active, like, going forth and getting things done. And then black, the yang, the yin part, is supposed to represent female, passive, earth, dark, and cold.
That sounds a lot like their characters.
And it reminded me a lot of their characters. And then even going further into that, the yin and yang sign is there's a little piece of each, and both of them to even them out. And I think that describes them extremely well. So it kind of led me to thinking more about their characters. Like, Yang is a very, like, bright person. Even her semblance is, like, your power kind of lights up, and you have this heat that comes into her, and she uses that to her advantage in a fight. So even her semblance goes along with that. Blake is less so than Yang, but I still see a lot of things in Blake. Like, she's dark, you don't really know much about her as a person because it's just the way she is. She doesn't really reveal herself that much.
Even on a literal stuff like what you're talking about, Yang semblance with Blake's, I think there are times when she uses it and her, like, because she can make kind of like shadow clones.
Yeah.
Like, they usually are, like, darker shadows of herself, literally. So that also plays along with that, too.
Right. So I thought that was also very interesting between those two characters, is it described them really well. And I don't know if that will be built on further as the series goes on, but it's definitely something I'll be looking out for.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. I know a lot of people that ship them, so here's hoping for you guys.
The Bumblebees.
Yes.
How do you feel about Bumblebee?
How do I feel about Bumblebee? I can kind of see it.
Yeah.
I feel like the crew also kind of ships it, just because there's literally a song called Bumblebee.
Yeah.
I don't know. This has a lot to do with later stuff, because obviously a lot of development has happened between the two. To be honest, I kind of see her and Sun more.
Yeah, same.
Or even her and Ilya. We briefly mentioned her before. Maybe a little bit. Maybe.
I can see where that might be a thing, yeah. I think Blake has a lot of potential, honestly, going with many people in the series.
Yeah.
She's just that kind of person, I guess.
Who knows? Maybe they'll be, like, the first, like, cartoon to be like, hey, here's this polyamorous character.
Oh, we'll have to see, I guess. So, anything you want to cover that we haven't talked about yet, Demi?
There's one thing about Blake that I noticed during this rewatch that I almost feel like slapping myself for. So, Blake, she's based off Beauty and the Beast, right? Because, like, the Team RWBY, they're based on fairy tale characters. You'd think just automatically, like, oh, she's Beauty, she likes to read, she's quiet, reserved. I think it's interesting, especially with Adam, when you find out about him, you'd think, like, oh, he's the Beast, there we go. Well, you find out, or figure out for yourself that, like, Blake is actually both Beauty and the Beast.
She is beastie in nature, but she also, I think she does kind of, to a point, represent, like, almost a curse. Like, her as a person, she doesn't exactly know where she's going with herself. And I think that's pretty evident right now, is that she just doesn't know what she's doing at this moment, and she's kind of cursed with that kind of mentality. Like, what am I doing with myself? My whole life has been this one thing, and now it's no longer that. What do I do next?
Yeah. And plus, I believe it's safe to say that she's, like, a well-known member of the White Fang.
Right. Especially since she was, like, the right-hand person of the leader.
Yeah, so she basically has a target on her back. Like, once people notice, like, oh, she's Faunus, oh shit, she's Blake, and then just all this.
Right, and I think that's also another reason she was kind of covering her ears, is because it's really a big part of her identity, is that there's probably she probably has a lot of enemies, and she doesn't want those enemies to find her.
Yeah. There's a lot of things I want to talk about, goddamn.
Yeah, same. I still have quite a few things, but I just got my two very big, like, research things.
Yeah.
Alright.
One thing right away, the dialogue at the very beginning of the series. Later on, you find out that it's, I'm gonna say, a certain character, like, it's not just generic narration. It actually is a certain character that comes to light later on, like, speaking. And I didn't realize that there was actually a second voice in that narration that was, like, responding to her. And you realize it's Ozpin's voice.
Yeah.
I never thought that. I don't know why it took, this is, like, my 4th rewatch, I think, of the first season.
It just never clicked.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just makes me question his relationship with this other person.
Right, I get what you're saying. Like, I think it's kind of hard to cover it right now, because, again, it gets to do something much bigger.
Yeah. But still, I do want to point out, it does seem pretty civil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between the two of them. Oh, also, at the beginning you're introduced to RWBY. She's the first character you see. Actually, I think she's, like, the 3rd or 4th character you see. The first one's actually Torchwick. But she's the first main character that you see show up in the show. She goes in and she becomes part of this, like, in the middle of the heist of this dust shop. Because of the heist, she gets pulled in and questioned by,
Glenda
Glenda and Ozpin. And Ozpin comes in. He has a plate of cookies, by the way. He's like, hey, I'm a friendly person. Take these cookies. And right away, he kind of, like, he starts talking to Ruby, and then he looks in her direction and immediately kind of looks at her and says, and this is something that I didn't really pick up on until later, but he says something very key and important right there at that moment, like, silver eyes. When I watched this the first time, I thought that was a really weird thing to point out, but we find out that that's something much bigger, and I'm wondering if it was one of his deciding factors bringing her into Beacon earlier than she should have been.
Also, one thing that I noticed, so the headmasters, or, like, even people like Glenda who are, like, more close to the headmasters, they're all based on, The Wizard of Oz, that story. Because, like, Ozpin, Glenda, insert other characters here. So I wonder if the silver eyes are also another connection to the Wizard of Oz. Because in the original books, the slippers that Dorothy wears are actually silver.
Oh, interesting.
Instead of red.
I did not know that.
And also the fact...
Which is actually kind of funny, because she's actually red.
Yeah. So I feel like they did that on purpose. And it might have more to do with Ozpin. I mean, there's still other mysteries surrounding them. Yeah. But Ozpin in particular, I feel like that could come into play.
Right. I get that. There's a few things that you didn't really think much about Ozpin until later, when you find out more and more about the series. I think there's so much more for us to still unravel as the series go on. I think they said they have plot points up to 12. We're just on 5.
Yeah.
So I think as time goes on, more and more things will be rolled out in front of us, and we'll find so many more connections as time goes on.
Other than just him being the headmaster, the only really big hint you get at him is just the quote when he's talking with Ruby a separate time. And he says, I have made more mistakes than any man, woman, or child on this earth.
Yeah, on this... Did he say earth or planet?
Wait, no. Earth...
On this planet.
On this planet, yeah.
Yeah, which I also found really odd. Like, it's a weird thing for him to say, I think. Because he doesn't look that old. He's maybe 60 years old. And
when you first hear it, it's like, whoa, calm down, edgelord.
Right?
I know you're just talking to a kid, but you don't have to exaggerate that much. But
right.
Yeah.
Oh, there's something that I did notice about RWBY that I'm kind of saddened by. So RWBY, at the beginning, she goes to Beacon, and she gets there, and she freaks out about everybody's weapons there, and she's just like, oh yeah, I'm a huge weapons nerd, it's great. And then that kind of fades.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
It never comes back into play after the first season. Even by the end of the first season, it seems completely irrelevant. And she's like, oh yeah, I built it myself, I love weapons, they're amazing, they're so cool. And that never really, like, nothing comes to fruition for that. It's just her being like, yeah, I like weapons.
I really wish they brought it up more. Like, I'm trying to remember. I know this is just about season 1, but, like, later on, there's a part where, like, more students flood in, which means more weapons. Yeah. And I don't remember her geeking out at all over that.
It's kind of something that just fades. And I'm kind of hoping that comes back to light. I thought that was a very interesting thing about her character. Like, she was this 16-year-old kid, and she's just like, yeah, weapons are cool, yeah, I want to build them, and do all these cool things with them, and then she just never did that.
Also, another thing in that same conversation bit, like, she mentions, like, how she used to go to, I think it was Signal Academy? Yeah. And, she trained under her Uncle Crow, and she also mentions having a lot of friends. Yeah. Where did they go?
Yeah, they never come back around.
Are we gonna see them again? She never talks about them.
I mean, college does, like, take a toll on your friendships, but, like, come on now.
Yeah. Especially with all this stuff happening. Like trains.
Happening. Yeah.
Before the train comes by, I'm curious if they're ever gonna go back to Signal Academy. Or not. Maybe check up on her friends. See how they're doing.
Like, things that happen later on, how do none of her friends go like, oh, are you okay? How are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, no one ever comes and check on her. She has friends, but it's never really covered.
Also, Yang clearly has friends at Beacon, too, but she never hangs out with them.
Yeah, even when they were like, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends now, and they're just shadows behind her. Like, she has friends, she just hasn't hung out with them, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to assume that everybody has friends other than what's in the show, but it kind of bugs me that they mentioned it.
And then do nothing about it.
Yeah.
Jake's up for her own bit.
Hi, we're recording.
Good.
That better not be the last strawberry.
No, it's not more.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not that terrible.
I love you, babe.
Ooh! Senpai! Please put that in the bloopers.
Hashtag bloopers.
Just
Okay, I don't remember what we were talking about because of the train, but I do want to also point out that Cinder, she's another of the, like, main bad guys. We see her briefly in this first season.
I mean, we see multiple shots of her, but we see actually her, like, her whole body right at the end.
Yeah. Otherwise, she's, like, kind of in the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Not like the other shadow people, but, like, they're obviously blocking her face.
Yeah.
And I do like to point out that right from the start, that she does seem to be able to control dust. Or, like, certain elements of dust.
She has some other ability that we don't know about. Maybe it's just her semblance.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Because everyone has powers. They call them their semblances. And it has to do closely with, like, kind of their personality or, like, their soul.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, everyone has them. And one question we both had when we were watching season 5 was, hey, what was Cinder's?
Yeah.
So I think that might be it.
That she can just control dust?
Possibly.
She uses fire liberally.
Mm-hmm.
Cinder, hence.
Mm-hmm.
But also controlling dust would kind of go along with her controlling self. She's a very controlling individual. She likes to make people do what she wants them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she doesn't like it when things go not her way.
Right. I don't think I have anything in regards to that per se, but I do have. Why does RWBY extrude petals? Rose petals. Like, I know her last name is Rose, but why does she extrude rose petals?
Yeah. Like, I was thinking maybe it has to do with her myth because she's based on Red Riding Hood, but that has nothing to do with that.
There is another character called Rose Red, which is kind of funny because Weiss is
Snow White.
Yeah. And they were supposed to be, in some mythos, Rose Red and Snow White were sisters. And I don't know if maybe she's actually supposed to be more like Rose Red in Little Red Riding Hood.
Or maybe she's like a combination of the two. Like,
maybe. She's
based on, physically, like her appearance is based off of Red Riding Hood. Mm-hmm. But her actual personality and her relationships, she's more Rose Red.
Well, I did read some Rose Red stories before, and Rose Red does have a similar outfit. Like, she wears a red dress, and she wears a red cape thing. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. Was it ever confirmed that who they represented in mythos?
I know it was confirmed. Oh, boy. It was confirmed that Blake was Beauty and the Beast. Mm-hmm. I think Yang was Rapunzel. Because of the hair thing. Mm-hmm. Because Rapunzel's semblance. Yang's semblance, she goes into rage mode, and it's especially triggered by if you touch her hair.
Yeah. It's very touchy about the hair.
Mm-hmm. And Weiss is obviously Snow White.
Right.
And hold on, I am gonna look it up now that I have my phone after that train break. Ruby Rose. Not the hot lesbian. The other Ruby Rose.
The other Ruby Rose. Yeah, it's something that I just noticed that she extrudes petals, and I'm pretty sure her mother did as well. It might have been mentioned. I'm not sure why her mother would have either. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know.
Okay, it says that she's Red Riding Hood.
Okay.
Okay, but why though? Because of her appearance. In her trailer, she's walking through a forest attacked by bear wolves, which are like wolves.
Right.
And Torchwick's nickname for her is Red.
Yeah, Red.
That's pretty much the only reason why she's considered Red Riding Hood. Also, the fact, I'm assuming, because she's the younger of the group and Red Riding Hood is usually like a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I was hoping there'd be more than just that.
I don't know. It's just something that I just thought, like, why does she... It's not her semblance. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just part of her semblance? Because she's super fast. That's what her semblance is. And it is every time she uses her semblance, the rose petals appear.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's just something that's linked to her semblance?
Maybe.
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that she... Petals, rose petals, why?
Mm.
Early on, at some point, Weiss and RWBY get in this big fight because Weiss is a very argumentative person. Because Weiss is like, oh yeah, I should have been the leader and all that. And RWBY ended up being the leader. And after they have their fight and they part ways, they each go talk to their respective people. For RWBY, it was Ozpin. And he told her that she has a very daunting responsibility and that you should do your best to learn how to deal with your responsibility. And I thought it was kind of interesting with patterns later on that I wonder if he was talking about more than just her leadership.
Oh.
And going beyond that.
Uh-huh.
Also, another thing that I was kind of wondering about Ozpin is he also brought in Jean,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty sure he knew his transcripts were fake.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty obvious thing, but he bring him in anyway.
This is kind of getting into spoilers, but it's fine. It's a rewatch. So we don't see much of Ozpin's semblance,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the general consensus, or headcanon, or whatever, is that it's very time-based.
Yes, I kind of had that idea too, especially his office is a giant clock.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, how far can he see? Like, can he see into the future, and how far can he see? Because he brings Jean for no, like, particular, like, reason at face value. And Glenda is even just like, why did you bring in this kid? He has no experience.
And he just sips his coffee, moves on, doesn't explain himself.
I feel like he knows more about RWBY. And it is actually even more confirmed he has a lot more ability than we see firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
He has so much more lore to him than what we see in season 1. So it could be that he does see that far into the future.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting that there's certain things that he does that he doesn't really explain to people. And I think it's it's safe to assume that he might have some knowledge about the future of some sort.
Yeah. Another small little comment I had is about Glenda. It feels like they kind of built her up to be a lot more than she actually is.
Yeah.
Like, her semblance is really powerful. I think it's just like telekinesis or something. Like, she could move objects with seemingly magic, just like with her mind, which could be really useful in a lot of situations.
I also sometimes wonder if there's more to her than we realize as well. With Ozpin similarly, and that may be why they work so close together. Unfortunately, some things have happened, and we're probably not going to hear much of Glenda.
Some falling out happened with her voice actress, which is why we don't see Glenda much in later seasons, even though she's clearly alive.
We know she's still alive,
well, that we know of.
Yeah. As far as we know, no one said she's dead yet. I feel like that'd be big information.
They could always just give her a new voice actor.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much more that they had planned for her, and that kind of threw a kink in things. And maybe they were building her up into something that was going to be much more extravagant, and just ended up not being able to do that.
Yeah, especially just by her name alone. Like Glenda Goodwitch.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other major headmasters are based on the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Whereas there's other teachers we see, like Oblak and Peter. Why did I call him Peter? Professor Port. I'm on a first name basis with these guys. Like, they're completely different. They're not based on the same thing at all. So it's like, why Glenda? And also she seems to be, like, kind of close with Oz.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not close enough to, like, be in the know of things, but
Right.
she is his, like, right-hand person. So I really hope we see more of her in the future if they ever fix that.
They ever deal with that situation.
Yeah.
In season 1, we're introduced to Penny, and we don't know much about Penny. It's pretty obvious that she is not human.
Yeah, like,
as much as the Team RWBY does not realize it for some reason.
right away from, like, her clothing to just her mannerisms and her way of speaking, it's like, okay.
Combat ready.
Salutations! I love her so much.
At the end of the season, the very last episode, we see her sitting in the back of a car, and we hear a voice come over saying, "Oh, you know your father doesn't like you wandering about." And they didn't give us very many, like, clues as to who her father might be in season 1.
Mm-hmm. If it wasn't obvious enough, Penny, her sort of legend thing that she's based off of is Pinocchio. Yeah. Ain't got no strings on me. So I wonder if there's just gonna be, like, a Geppetto-like character later on,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's gonna be, like, a symbolism thing where her father... I don't want to say... Hold on, let me rethink my words. Because what I was about to say was gonna come off as really mean, but I don't mean it to be mean. But, like, sort of a person that we're already introduced to that's, like, pulling the strings.
Yeah, pulling the strings. Yeah.
So to speak, of, like, other plot shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm just really curious. And also the person in the car.
Yeah.
It could have just been me, like, overthinking things, but it did sound a lot like Oz's voice actor. Again, that could just be me overthinking things. And making connections where they're not.
I don't know about that. I honestly didn't really connect that voice with anybody per se. It might be the same voice actor, maybe, but I feel like it's a much more, like, dominant voice.
Okay.
Yeah, as opposed to Ozpin's,
Mhm.
if you know what I mean.
As we're talking, I'm just thinking, I don't know if they already had a voice for him, but what if the person in the car was... Now I'm even forgetting his name. The more military one.
Oh, God, what was his name? I know who you're talking about, but
Yeah, it was Ironwood.
Ironwood, yeah,
Yeah.
that guy.
If, like, maybe it was him, but they just didn't have a voice for him, so they're like, here you go, just
Yeah.
pretend you're someone else. But on top of that, like, if he's the one talking with Penny, then who's higher up than Ironwood to, like, create her, if that makes sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
That's more in season 2, though. Ironwood doesn't show up in season 1.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna go further than that, I was just...
He shows up in season 2, and it would kind of make sense, giving some context of Twitch, where we can cover it more later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something we've discussed before, actually. But yeah, so yeah, Penny, she's a person, and I hope we'll pick up more pieces of Penny later on.
I low-key ship her and Ruby.
Same.
Are you really my friend?
Friend? Never had a friend before. God, I love her. She's great.
A few things surrounding the forest part when they're, like, getting those relics. When Ruby and Weiss are walking through and they're, like, bickering and stuff, we see a feather falling out of
I
nowhere.
actually also have that written down.
So you could just chalk it up to being like, oh, it's just the giant bird in the sky.
But I get where you're going with this.
It could be foreshadowing to another character later on.
Right.
That has certain connections with Ruby.
I remember, this is why I was going to cover it later, because I actually had that same thought, because it could be like, the feather comes down, like, oh, they're just foreshadowing what's going to happen later on in this season. But that feather didn't quite match the bird. That thing was ginormous, and that feather was only a few inches.
The feather on the giant bird was, like, as big as one of them.
Yeah. She also does hit a bird on her way down to land.
Oh my god, she does. I can just imagine.
Bird!
God damn it. Also, I'm just gonna leave this out here as foreshadowing. I noticed a particular line when they're talking about, like, how they're gonna, like, get back to the school. I don't know if it was Ruby who said it, or if it was maybe Nora, but someone specifically said, our mission is not to kill. We grab the relics and get out of here. So, I wonder if that's gonna play a part, or, like, if it's, like, very telling of what they're gonna have to do later.
Later, yeah.
Heavy, capital L later.
During that fight scene with the bird,
Yes.
it's pretty obvious that Jean has some good leadership skills.
Oh, yeah.
And he's commanding, he knows exactly what he's gonna have each of them do. He's strategizing right there on the spot, which is really cool. As much as people can say, oh, he was such a loser, he didn't do much, I don't think he's such a combat person, but he's more of a strategist.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's gonna be Jean's, like, role for most of the show. On the opposite end of that, Ruby became leader of RWBY, but she doesn't really have any leadership skills. But I also thought about what Ozpin has in mind for her later on, and maybe he was just helping her build up to that. But I just thought it was really fun, the night and day difference between the two. Like, Jean's so very definitely a leader, and Ruby's not.
Yeah. Also, that scene made me fully fall in love with the series. I mean, already the character interactions were, like, fantastic.
Right.
But, like, right when the music hits,
Oh, yeah.
when they start fighting the giant bird.
I remember being very hype about that scene. Yeah, which is funny because it gets so much better later on. Like, that scene was just the tip of the iceberg. And that I agree, it was something that made me, like, really get into the series, was just that scene. Like, if there's more of this to come, I'm totally game and watching it.
And plus, how they managed to defeat the bird is, like, actually really dark.
It is. It really is.
And they don't even address it, like, yeah, we're back, we're good. We got these neat little pieces.
Chess pieces, white knights, white rooks, yeah, good people. Rewatching it now, like, it's still a good scene, but as compared to later, it is nothing.
Oh, also, I wonder, we mentioned before, like, John's aura. I don't think we said that Pyrrha's the one who specifically unlocks it.
Yeah.
So I wonder, why was it locked to begin with? Or why was he not attuned to it to begin with? From what I gather, it seems like everyone's just used to having auras.
Yeah.
Like, they just come, like,
whenever.
Yeah. So why did he need extra help with it? And also, can everyone do that? Or
Unlock auras, or is it just something specifically Pyrrha could do?
Yeah.
I guess I never really thought about that, but you're right. She even told him, like she knows something about his aura. I think her semblance is more than just manipulating poles, which is not manipulating poles. Polarity?
Polarity.
Yeah, that. It's more than that. It's weird to look at her, because she says she unlocks Jean's aura, and she tells him, you have a lot of aura. And, like, how does she know that? Is that something everybody know, or is that something special to Pyrrha?
Those are just more questions.
She was supposed to be leagues ahead of everybody else, so maybe it was just something that maybe people, like, can do as they get further into training, but I just thought it was weird that it was only covered, like, with her.
Also, this just came to me, like, with what we were saying with Ozpin, if it isn't just Pyrrha that can notice it, or whatever, maybe Ozpin noticed how much aura he had.
That could be, that's true, seeing that bit in him and why he bring him into everything.
Yeah, and just thinking, like, oh, I don't know what you can do, but I really want to see it.
Yeah, I wonder if it's something that may be special to some people, like, who can see through auras better and know how they work more, or if it's something that everybody has.
Another thing I just want to point out that is going to be important later in our later rewatch, not much of, like, a discussion thing, just pointing it out. As of right now, only Ruby and Weiss know about Pyrrha's semblance.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. Like, not even John knows about it.
As far as he knows, he was just really cool in that moment.
Which is, like, another thing. Like, I know we talk about Pyrrha a lot here, but she's a cool character.
She's lovely. I love her so much.
But, like, again, with her not being much of a show-off, you'd think with someone with, like, magnetic abilities or something, they'd be like, oh, yeah, I can do this. Your weapons can't touch me.
She's just such a humble person. It could just have a lot to do with that she's just humble. Or maybe it might have been something that was common knowledge again, because she's so, she's famous, so maybe it's just something that a lot of people knew already. Or maybe she just doesn't like to talk about it, because she already feels like she gets enough attention and doesn't want any more for having a cool semblance.
Did we talk about Sun?
We touched on him.
Okay.
Not much. What do you got?
One question, why does he steal so much? I'm curious to see about his backstory as well.
Yeah, he also was not very well covered. He still isn't, even in season 5. He seems there more for plot convenience, but maybe he just has a past that he doesn't like to bring up. Much like Blake. It's also the fact that, like, he came to Vale on a boat that he stowed away on. But we find out a little later that he actually has a team.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why he was on the boat.
Like, if he already has a team, then why would he be a stowaway? Unless it was just, like, a retcon thing, where they originally just had him be, like, a random vagrant person, and then later on they're like, oh no, let's just give him his team.
Maybe.
Yeah, do, like, a slight rewrite.
It does kind of feel like season 1, especially towards the end, that there was a lot of, like, rushing. I think they realized that, hey, this is picking up speed. We need more on this. And in the last, like, 4 episodes, so much happens that lead to plot later on. And I think it makes me wonder if they just didn't know how far it was going to go at the time and just didn't have much on it. And they just added stuff to it later. Like, for example, Sun being more than just a vagrant.
I actually forget a lot of times, especially now that a lot of streaming services and, like, other shows, they tend to, like, push things like a full season at a time because binge culture. But I forget, especially with this first season, I mean, actually more so now, that they release episodes on, like, a weekly basis.
Right, not all at once.
Yeah. So they literally were like, here's an episode, let's hope it does good. And then, holy shit, it's doing good.
I think we need more.
Yeah. 1 episode left. Oh no.
4 episodes, we got approved for 4 more seasons? We'll just add all this stuff right now.
Yeah. Was there anything else you want to talk about, touch on?
Don't think so.
Okay.
I think I'm all set with my notes.
Okay, so since we're towards the end here, shall we talk about the elephant in the room? Fucking Carden. Like, it's kind of cringy rewatching it. Because I know how epic the show is. And I know how epic, like, some scenes are, but it feels like they set aside, like, a lot of season 1 to focus on this, like, anti-bullying arc.
Yeah.
And can we not?
Especially since, like, as time goes on, they become less and less relevant. I mean, I guess they were kind of important to Jean's character development.
Yeah.
If it weren't for them, then he wouldn't have developed nearly as much as he did. He wouldn't have learned so much if he didn't have that little bit there to deal with them and try to have to work through that as a character. But it does seem like a lot just for that. Because they focus a whole, like, 2 episodes on it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if maybe he develops too later on. Like, if we see him actually grow up and not be just a stock footage, like, bully character.
Right.
But also, I don't want to see him.
Right. I think he does show up a little bit in season 2, but not enough to be, like, relevant. I don't know, maybe they had plans for him originally that they marked out, I'm not sure.
Actually, I'm curious. Because everyone's based off of, like, something else. We mentioned that before.
His whole team is kind of, like, I don't even know the rest of his team's names.
Me neither. Hold on, I'm seeing if he even matters. If he has another thing. Trivia. He alludes to Henry Beaufort. Who the fuck is Henry Beaufort?
Alright.
Oh. He oversaw the trial of Joan of Arc.
Oh. You know, Jean.
Yeah.
Is based off of Joan of the Arc.
John's full name is John Arc.
Yes, and I don't know if we covered this, but everybody in Team Juniper is a gender-bent version of their lore. Jean is Joan of the Arc, and they all cross-dress at some point in their lore. Jean is Joan of the Arc, Nora is Thor, Pyrrha is Achilles, and then Ren is Mulan. So that might make him a little more relevant.
Maybe later on. Again, we have yet to see. I don't feel like looking up the other people from Card and Steam.
They might not even be important enough to have something.
They might not have names.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe they'll be relevant later. We'll see. Mm-hmm. It is kind of nice that we do have some seasons that we haven't watched yet. Mm-hmm. And there's still so much room for stuff, and hopefully we'll pick up on things to talk about later when we get up until, like, season 7 or 8, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe they'll all come back and fight the evil person at the end.
That would be so epic. If there's nothing else, before we end this, I do want to just kind of go over, like, some basic stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, favorite characters, least favorite characters, just in the season.
Just in the season.
Just in the season.
I have to really think for that one. For me, this season, I think my least favorite character, like, of the main characters, I don't really want to say something about side characters like Carmen that were just, like, not important.
One and done, yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, Weiss was my least favorite character in this season. I didn't like her attitude. It might have just been because I'm biased, because Blake is one of my favorite characters, and she was really mean to Blake.
How dare you?
How dare you hurt my child? Weiss was my least favorite, which is funny, because she doesn't stay that way, not by a long shot. My favorite character, though, is a little more complicated, I think. I really like Blake, I like Sun, and I liked Penny a lot. And I really liked Ruby in this season as well. I think just the fact that there was so many... For me, being a girl who has been watching shows my entire life, to have this show where most of the main characters were all female, it was really hard for me to pick a favorite character. I am very biased towards the female heroes, but thinking back on it, it's hard to, because things have changed a lot as I've gone forward in watching the show, but I think at the end of this season, Blake was my favorite. She was mysterious, she was cool, she was dark, and she was really cool, like, badass looking, like, rogue person, basically, and I really liked that about her. How about you?
I think my least favorite, again, ignoring Carden, I think I'm just gonna go with Torchwick. I know he doesn't play, like, a big part, but still, what we see of him, it's like, yeah, you're bad, but really, I just want you to go away.
Yeah, I get that. I can see where that might be a thing. How about... Favorite character.
I'm gonna have to stay with Penny.
Yeah.
Like, her semblance, I mean, it's not really a semblance.
It's not really a semblance,
no.
But for the context.
For what they know of
yeah.
as her semblance. Like, it's, like, wicked powerful. And she's just so adorable. Mm-hmm. She just wants love and friendship. She just wants to be a normal person.
Yeah. I want to be a real girl.
Yeah, I also really like John. But then again, I like the doofus male characters.
I like John a lot, too.
Although, specifically this season, like, hands down Penny. Another thing I want to ask is favorite and least favorite weapon.
Oh. Ooh. I guess I never really thought about that one that much before.
Again, just this season.
Which makes me think more. I don't know. I think I really liked Weiss's weapon. I thought the rapier with
the, like, roulette
thing going on that could turn into a handgun. I thought that was pretty cool. And I liked that she was able to use dust in so many different ways. Because right now it wasn't really that big of a deal. It was, like, her family's thing was dust, and it wasn't really that big otherwise. And it's the only really real source of dust in the show was her weapon. My least favorite, I think, was actually Blake's. Not Blake's,
oh,
Yang's.
Okay. Wait, what?
Yang's,
okay. I mean, it's just her fists.
It's just her fists and a wrist gun?
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was alright, but it's just not as exciting as it could be. Which is funny, because Jean's isn't that exciting either, but I like Jean's because it's so boring, I guess.
Yeah. Like, everyone comes with these fancy weapons, and John's like, I got the sword.
I got a sword with a shield that turns into a scythe. Oh, yeah, not scythe, sheath.
Yes, it still weighs the same size.
It still weighs just as much.
That's another thing I like about the show, that they give that everyone's weapon is both a range and a melee attack.
Yeah, except for Sean's.
Except for... But, I think my favorite weapon would have to be Sun's, actually. Sun's is like the staff that breaks apart and turns into like revolvers, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds just as chaotic as it is. And not only do the guns break apart, but they also turn into nunchucks.
Yeah.
So imagine that, and he's also shooting at you while he's like doing all these crazy flips.
Yeah.
And
like shotgun, yeah.
how would that be? Like, imagining him training with that.
Dangerous. So dangerous.
He must have, like, shot himself, like, so many times.
There were blinks, it's fine.
Yeah. Just the sheer ridiculousness of it, and also seeing it in action is, like, stunning. That has to be my favorite. As for least favorite, I might have to go with Blake's.
Yeah.
Just because I don't really think you see them
Yeah,
that
you
much.
don't really see their abilities a lot much.
And plus, from what I remember, a lot of the times you do see her use it, it's usually to, like, grapple herself, which is really useful, but, like, you don't really see, like, her actually using it. Yeah.
I think she's very much of a, like, scout-based person. I feel like. She's more of a scout than a fighter.
Well, that seems to be it about season 1 of RWBY. Did you guys enjoy this rewatch? Let us know down below, or tweet at us.
At the Bard's Kiss.
I am Spacey Ghost. We're planning on continuing this further on into season 5.
Until we can't rewatch anymore. Then
Pretty
it's just
much.
gonna be not rewatch, it's just gonna be
Yeah, just
regular.
full-on impressions. So that's gonna be fun. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the rest of the series. I mean, I enjoyed this. This is the first time I've done anything like this, and I surely would love to do it again.
Yeah, and I'd love to have you again. It's gonna be really hard once 6 comes out, because that's like, what, next month?
Yeah. 2 months from now, I think it is. I think it was in November, or October. It was in October.
Yeah.
September,
So it is 2
October.
months, because September didn't even happen yet.
Yeah. So we still got 2 months before then, and yeah, maybe we can try to do a quick cover video.
Maybe.
But it takes a lot of editing to put these out.
Yeah.
Demi's great. Spacey.
I try my best.
It's a lot of work to do these.
Editing's hard.
But yeah, so hopefully you guys will join us again in the future.
Yeah, I hope so too. And if you haven't seen RWBY, and we just spoiled everything about the first season, like, I'd still recommend giving it a chance, even if it is kind of rocky. Even if there are moments, cough, cough, card, and cough, that you'd rather skip over. And plus, animation aside, it's a labor of love. The characters are fantastic. And it's so worth it, especially going on in the further seasons. So, thank you guys for listening to this. Until next time, I don't know when this is gonna be released. I hope you're doing well in the future.
Look forward to seeing you